So Ian, thanks very much for having us.
Okay,
this is
thanks so much.
An incredible place. I'm excited to show everybody around. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to, Jay's going to get a ton of great shots. We're standing in front of, basically, what I'm ashamed to say is that my experience with all of this stuff here is mostly just the UAD equivalent.
Well, that's very fair.
Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I've demoed this before. But it's such an incredible space. But I want to find out, I saw on your website, this is called Union Sound Company. Mm-hmm. And we're here in Toronto in the East End. And you guys, I saw on your website, it's only been open for 3 or 4 years, is that right?
Yeah, we've only been open for 3 years.
So talk to me real quick about how you got into engineering, how you got into being obsessed with gear and posting on Gear Sluts, and then how you found this place and built it.
Just a quick, my thing was I started going to U of T for computer engineering.
Okay.
And I was really into electronics and computers, and I got really bored of it, and I was not successful. I dropped out.
Right.
And I was DJing a lot of the time, and I went to Harris to learn about how to make electronic music.
Oh, cool.
And after a little while, my interest in electronics and my interest in music kind of started to come together, and I started to, I bought a Studer console and I restored it.
Wow.
I ended up buying the Neve and restored it, and then I would just
This is before you had a studio?
Yeah, so this was when I was
You bought a Neve, just personally?
Well, it was, I did have a Coach House recording studio near Trinity Bellwoods.
Okay.
So this was in a transition time, but it was mostly like I had a job that was like paying decently, and so I just started spending all my extra money on
Good for you.
on gear. So I've gone through a lot of different iterations of buying and selling.
Yeah.
And then a while after that, I started to get more, I totally stopped making electronic music, and I started recording friends of mine, and then I kept collecting, and then eventually myself and Leon Tahaney and Chris Stringer, the three of us came together and decided that there was a market for a studio that had high-end gear and that had a proper control room and live room, but wasn't necessarily at the level of the end price of the the big guys.
Right.
In the city.
Okay.
There was like this little like gap where it's like
I can see
DIY space,
Yep.
and then pro amazing studio.
Yeah.
Nowhere in the middle for like those artists that are pretty successful, but not quite booking, not Rush.
That's a really good point. Speaking of which, you've had some great names though in here. Broken Social Scene.
Yeah, that was very
Pop
cool.
was in here.
Yeah. We've had some really cool. Cool bands.
It's incredible. I mean, a huge list, especially Canadian acts. Mm-hmm. It's been incredible.
We've been really lucky.
You guys have a good reputation amongst the labels and the bands.
It's terrible. It's so. I don't know. You have to ask. You know what? Nobody tells you if you have a good or bad reputation.
That's true.
We just try and. We're always asking people, so was there anything you were missing or that you needed? And, we'll pick up that piece of gear, or we'll, get a new headphone system. Right. It's a constant, catch up.
Well, it's interesting you're talking about that small little space in the market between the DIY and the major commercials, because I think for a band, like a band who is moderately successful, has a little bit of a budget or a label, I think it does make sense. It's like they want to feel like they're still driving to a small little urban space. So they have that kind of cool, when you step outside here in the playground, it's just a really cool vibe.
Right.
But at the same time, this is their livelihood. They want to make a record that gets recognized by, worldwide. Yeah. And so they do know the importance of great gear. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely not a market that was addressed. The ends are closing in, the higher end studios are getting a little cheaper, and the DIY spaces in the smaller studios are creeping up a little bit. Yeah. So we're getting closed in. But
I saw Matt and Jill Barber. Was that their latest record? Their brother and sister record?
I think so.
Record?
Chris worked on that record, so
that's cool.
Ask him, but I'm pretty sure that was relatively recently.
Yeah, that's cool. So this is something that you had. Jay, are we okay?
Yeah.
Feeling good? Good. You feeling okay?
Yeah, good.
Good. So this is something that you said you picked up on your own. Where did you find this?
So it's a Neve 8014. Okay. I got it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. and I bought it from a guy who used to have a studio in Montreal, and then closed it up and put this into storage.
Wow.
So I went to Montreal, and I hadn't seen it yet, and I just showed up and started running through it. And it was in actually surprisingly, cosmetically it wasn't in the best condition,
Right.
but working wise it was in very good condition.
Wow.
So
And did he have it posted online?
yeah, sort of, but it was like in a hard to find spot, and like it wasn't
for
a real
you.
picture. It was I had a studio console that I sold to Candle Recording at the time that
Okay.
I'd fully restored, and I sold off like everything I had, like,
Yeah.
and it was like boring money to
Yeah.
try and get this together.
Yeah.
So
what year is this? Like what
I
era
think
is
it's
this
about
from?
71
Okay.
kind of time.
And was he the original owner?
So he bought it in the 80s from the original owner, and the original owner was a studio called The Pines in Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
And the story goes that this guy was the distributor for Neve, and he also owned this jingle studio.
Oh.
And this was their jingle console in the 70s, and then this got sold to the person I bought it from. And it got replaced with a Helios console, which is also very cool.
Oh, cool.
And I actually called because I was doing my research and I
Yeah.
wanted to know that this was legitimate. So the studio is still open. So I called the Pines,
Yeah.
and I spoke to the guy who bought it, his wife.
Yeah.
And she looked up the paperwork and said, "Oh yeah, it's this serial number, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's it."
Oh
and
my
she's like, "Do you want to
gosh.
talk to an engineer that worked on it when in the '70s?" And I was like, "Okay." And the guy was like, "Oh, it was a great console. Yeah, it was
Oh,
very,
man.
it was very neat."
Do you know what jingles were recorded on it?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you, but you can still get a bit of that jingle vibe when you're recording here, right?
Can you? Yes, that's true. That's why everyone comes here, I think. Pop has done some great
Oh
jingles.
yeah, exactly.
Jay, do you want to, I really want to, can you walk me through like a strip here and
For
walk me
sure.
through the workflow?
Yeah, so these are all Neve 1073s.
Yeah.
They're all original ones.
Oh my gosh.
And most of them are consecutive serial number.
Wow.
So as like a normal 1073, you've got your line and mic gain
Mm-hmm.
here. You've got a high shelf, which I think on the 1073 is 10K, maybe 12K.
Okay.
And then you've got your mid bell and your low shelf, and then a high pass filter here at the bottom.
Okay.
Vacuum phase.
Cool.
So that's just regular 1073s. And then this is the routing module. It's an 1883. And it's pretty basic, but it's still pretty useful. You've got pan, so you can flip on the pan and do left and right.
Okay.
You've got your 4 buses. So if you do 1 and 2 and turn on the pan, you can pan between 1 and 2 or 3 and 4.
Okay.
Basic stuff. And then you've got essentially 2 sends. One's called Q and one's called Rev for reverb.
Oh, okay.
The thing about these is that there's 2 outputs, 1 and 2, but there's only 1 level.
Right. Okay.
So you can't send a different amount to 1 and a different amount to 2. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So if I want to send, if I had like, let's say if I did headphones through the Q system, and person at number 1 wanted this much headphones, I couldn't give number 2 a different amount because they're connected to the same knob.
Okay. Okay.
Reverb works in the exact same way. It's just a second send, and then cut and solo and volume.
And so what do you normally use the sends for?
Personally, I use them either for sometimes parallel drum stuff.
Oh, okay.
So maybe if you've got your drum kit and all your mics set up, it's nice to do a little bit of like either a mono, or you can do a hard left and right. Like a parallel drum, so you can throw it through like 1176s or the Orange County.
Okay.
And you can like send, okay, I want like kick and snare top in about that much, and then maybe just like a little bit of the rooms.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you can like crush it and get it sounding really cool, and then mix it in with everything else in Pro Tools. So.
And where does it come back?
So we only have 16 channels here, so
Okay.
to bring it back, I would put it straight into Pro Tools because I wouldn't want to waste 1073s on just the return.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
It does have 2 reverb returns here, but that's to go back into the buses, and the buses aren't used very often, to be honest. It's more used as like preamps and routing.
Right. That's amazing. So what are these compressors here?
Those are 2254Es.
Okay.
When I was buying the console, the guy had two 2254Es and two 2254As. I could not afford the A's as well. So
you bought everything but the
they're really expensive. And I was already pushing my limit, so I decided to get the two. The difference between the A's and E's, I think, are that on the E's, you have, so there's a compressor and a limiter.
Okay.
And on the limiter, there's a slow and fast on the E's, and I think there's only one of those options on the A. They look a little different. They have toggle switches here, and they say A instead of E.
And do you use these on an individual channel or on the whole bus?
Yeah, they're pretty like thick and like, people describe them as like hot chocolate or what. They're I wouldn't necessarily use them for bus stuff, but they can be really, they're really nice. They're really fun. It's just, I don't know, I throw them on something, I'm like, wow, they really work for this. Okay, whatever.
So how do you assign them to a channel?
So those are just on the patch bay.
Oh, on the patch
totally
bay.
separately.
Okay.
So it's not like a.
Okay.
Yeah. And then these are all just line amps for all the different like sends and things like that. These are 1272s. You often see these turned into preamps. They are, it's like sometimes you'll see, like I think there are Neve channels that are called like 1272 or something like that for BAE. And they're essentially just the first half of a, do you know on a 1073 you have, if you turn up the gain, click, 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 off. There's a spot in the middle where the gain just turns off. Yeah. That is the separation between two separate amplifiers, essentially. So the first clicks as you go, you're in amplifier number 1, which is the identical thing, exact same thing as a 1272. Then once you hit off, once you get above that, it kicks in a second amplifier as well, which those don't have. So if
what does that second amplifier do?
It's just increases the gain. So we have one amplifier and then it adds a second
another one.
It adds another one, so you can get into the higher gains.
You know, come to think, I actually have a 1073 from BAE, just the preamp unit, and I've never really understood how that works. It's like, why do they put the off in the middle?
It's really weird. It's annoying. It's like, wait, what happened? Did you have to, like,
keep turning it up until it shuts off. Yeah,
but that's
awesome.
So these are 1272s. They're used as line amps, and then this is an 8-channel return. It gets used very rarely, but you know, back in the day, if you're using 4 8-track tape, you send these to the tape machine, and then you listen back on this area, and you just, with a flip of a switch, you can listen to those.
So if you're recording something traditional, like vocals or acoustic guitar or something, this is your preamp, and this is doing the bulk of your EQ, is that right? Or will you use different EQs as well?
It depends on what it is. Normally I would go straight for the Neve, but lately I've been, we had a little shootout. We invited some friends over and we put up some drums and tried all the different pre's that we had and listened to the differences, and it was relatively surprising. I didn't think it would make such a difference. And so now I'm personally, I mostly use the Neve, but sometimes I'll be like, actually I want this like to be a little more like punchy or a little like more forward. Maybe I'll use like this option or this option. And the EQ, although is great on the Neve, it doesn't do everything, you know? And so sometimes if like maybe I'll use the API 560s are really good on like kick drum and things like that, or the Pultecs are always fun. It just depends.
And if you're doing drums, are you doing some of this Outboard stuff right away, or is that stuff you'll do in mixing?
No, mostly it's I commit to everything. Cool. So I'm trying to get it to sound as much as how I want it to sound. Just straight. I barely use plugins when I'm tracking personally. I'm like a lot of people work here, but it's really. I really like to, instead of being like, okay, I've got like a vanilla sound that I can mess with later. I find that really unhelpful when mixing. So
that's great.
Who cares? Smash it.
Yeah. Well, it's it's amazing when we were talking to Mike about his new API console, and he was saying his first mix, it was such a minimal amount of plugins in Pro Tools after using it.
Once you like get into the world,
I dream of that day.
Whatever. Do you know what? I've done mixes at home with all plugins, just like fun stuff for myself. That I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And I was like, how did I do that? It's like, oh yeah, I used like a PV board and like plugins, you know, it's It's just a different thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't not necessarily better or worse.
Well, it's a gorgeous console.
Thank you. Yeah.
And who worked on it to get it back into?
So I did.
Wow.
It was actually in very good shape, so it didn't take a lot of work. It was so all of these faders were really they were all like scratched and totally crazy.
Oh, okay.
So I got them stripped and repainted and re-silk screened.
Oh, cool.
There were a couple of, like, you can't see, but underneath there were a couple of panels that were really scratched. One was missing, so I had the missing one remanufactured, and then I had them all stripped and repainted.
Did this patch bay come with it as well?
Nope.
Okay.
So this is an extra little like sidecar thing that we added.
Okay.
And then we just bought all of these bays.
How did you match the wood and everything?
We have a really great guy, Brennan.
Good job.
Our buddy Brennan is a woodworking guy, and he
That's awesome.
hooked us up. And also, I should say that a friend of ours, James Rowell, he's a guy from Cambridge. He lives in Cambridge, and maybe Kitchener. And he, after a little while of talking to him, I was like, oh, James knows a lot more about this than I do. I should so anytime we have any like little things with a Neve, we just get him to come. He's like a super expert.
That's
he knows what
awesome.
he's talking about.
Give me the model number one more time for the folks at home. What was it?
It's an 8014.
An 8014.
Yeah.
That's cool.
16 channels makes a lot of sense.
Are there other ones in the world? Do you know of any others?
Of these?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
So this is like the smallest big console for the era. You may have seen like a BCM 10, which is, it looks like a sidecar. It's 10 of these. The routing channels are totally different in their passive.
Yeah.
But it's like the kind of thing that you would take to a remote thing.
Okay.
Then you start getting into bigger stuff that the model numbers get really confusing. There's some 8028s, and then, on and on. 83s.
I've always wondered about like gorgeous consoles like this where there really aren't, thousands in the world. And I was always wondered, does Neve know where all their consoles are? Like, do they have an idea?
No? The current Neve is not associated with it's AMS Neve now.
Oh,
I guess
okay.
is
Right.
Or whatever, or maybe they're just Neve now,
Yeah.
but they don't, I think it's the kind of situation where they were sold a couple times and they have like no...
That's
idea
true.
of
Yeah,
any
they're
of that
not
kind of
like the
stuff.
same as like API or SSL where they're still really active. And
Even API is like got sold multiple times in like the early years. The original. So there's if you look at vintage API stuff, there's some really weird modules that are like API. There's a 550A1, and then there's and there are certain versions that are totally different technology, and it's very a lot of these companies have like really crazy history, like Universal Audio and Teletronics and Uri.
Right.
You kind of don't think about like, Universal Audio made these, and then there's like some weirdness with like who's Uri, and then Uri made LA2As for a little while, and
Right.
and Teletronics, who are those?
Right.
It's all these companies that started to like come together.
Well, it's kind of like, they were just a lot of smart guys who were just trying to probably curve around like their patents and their copyrights. But it's funny because like they probably had no idea of what their brands would turn into 30 or 40 years later.
Like there's so many different companies making audio equipment at the time, and some you can find that are just garbage, and there's some like Pultex, they're just an equalizer that people freaked out about, right?
It's incredible. I'm trying to think of a parallel in other industries where you have electronic equipment that was made. My TV is 4 years old and it's completely irrelevant. But like, you know what I mean? Like, where else would you find this electronic equipment that is 40, 50 years old and is still so relevant, so sought after?
It's really surprising. Even in, like, what's really strange is that, like, video is a similar kind of world, where you have, it's like an art and it's also technology.
Yeah.
Video is not using any old stuff. Video is like super cutting edge, top of the line,
Yeah, that's a good point.
photography is like pretty cutting edge,
Yeah.
unless you're like, you want to do film for
Right.
for a little fun.
Well, having said that, we film everything on VHS here.
Oh, perfect. I'm so glad.
People can order the box set at home.
You can rewind.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
It's a weird little, there's something about the fact that I don't know. I don't know what it is about music specifically that gravitates
And
towards
I really
this.
would, I'd love to talk to someone who was an engineer in the 80s and 90s, because it's really interesting how, and we've actually seen some studios that like cleared out all of this stuff and bought, you know, the digital consoles. They bought some of the gear that is just garbage now. And it's incredible, like what was the mindset back then? And then when was that switch where people were like, oops, you know, analog is what we want.
Interesting. I have no idea.
I mean, it's just, it boggles my mind because, and I didn't live in an era of like working in analog, then switching to digital, and then I'm just kind of like observing what's, you know, what people like, but I get it. Like there is something about, I mean, they say this, I see this in a film picture versus a digital picture too, but there's something about that grain and about that hiss that is appealing and comforting.
It's true, but it's really hard to say. Like I was saying, I've got those mixes that I was doing that's just all plugins, and I'm like, man, this sounds like so vibey and cool. I'm just using like Sound Toys, everything, you know.
Right.
It's all part of what I like about the gear, and just about the fun part is that it makes your job easier to just be like, Pultec, wee, it sounds so good.
Yeah.
And then committing to it. For me, by committing to like getting the sound that I want from the get-go, when I get to mix time, it's less about, okay, so what is this going to sound like? And it's more like, let me just refine this a little bit and like get it even more into the pocket that I was pushing towards, you know? Just that commitment is, for me, a really big thing.
I think it is a good thing, and I think so much digital products are being designed to avoid that commitment.
Right.
Everything is about,
what's the point? Yeah.
You know, you read online that's like this new microphone, you can record this way, but later if you change your mind, you can switch the microphone.
Yeah.
And it's cool, and it's a cool selling feature, but it actually turns me off. It makes me think I don't want to make those decisions. For me, when I load up a synth, when there's like 100,000 presets in there, I usually pick one of the first 5.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know what, this is giving me that good emotion, let's go with that. Because if you start to think like how many presets there are, same with reverb plugins, like
it's endless.
It's endless. And if it feels good, then stick with it.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
All right. So this is like, first of all, your aesthetic. Everything is laid out so neatly. Congratulations, man. It's such a beautiful thing.
I take pictures of the rack, and then like in my free time, I just look at it and think about like, oh, what would be better if I moved it? So I appreciate that comment.
Oh no, man, it's great. Most of my iPhone screensavers are my gear. It really is. Not my kids, my gear. Okay, so we don't have much time, but there's so much here that I want to talk about. So we're going to skip over the distressors.
Yeah.
We've seen these. We love these. So what's this right here?
So those are V72s.
Okay.
They are made by a couple different companies, but they're the line amps from original, your early Beatles records, I guess.
Right, okay.
They were used, I think we were talking about them but off camera, but they, like these 1272s that we talked about, where they're line amps, these were line amps early on, I guess in the 50s, 60s. So I think originally they were mic preamps, but then they're low gain. They're only 34 dB of gain.
Okay.
And they're essentially just old tube pre's.
Okay.
There's a V76, which is like the granddaddy of it, which has a lot more gain, but they sound very cool. I was actually, the first time I used those, I was really surprised by how different
Really?
the preamps sounded. They're very scooped and smooth.
What makes you go for them over the 1073s?
Like I said, like the 1073s have a big bottom, but there's something smooth and scooped and not a big top end on them that like they're really nice for rooms, and they're just like a fatter sort of pre, not very forward.
Right.
I've used them on vocals and stuff before, and they're just like
And they have to be racked in this modern system like this?
Yeah, so originally they came like in they were in the side of a console, and they're modules, right? And so you have to rack them up.
Everybody at home is too shy to ask this question, but I'm going to ask, like, what the hell is this for? Is that just a handle?
Okay, I'll do it without pulling it out. It's a little lock, so there's a little catch here, and it's so that you can do it and pull it out.
Oh.
So
see, I asked the tough questions here, folks.
You know, we gotta get these out of the way.
Because it's always so crazy. It's like, man, what? Oh man.
It's just to lock it in.
It's so funny back then. I'm sure things weren't about like cosmetic as they are today. Like it was just about. There wasn't this gear porn back then.
I guess so, but you know what? Most modern gear, I don't think looks as good as some.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But no designer would ever come up with that system today.
Right? I don't know. It works
but it's
for me.
great. It works for me. We've got a lot of 512s here. Are these different models, or
they are slightly? You know, we've been picking them up as we go, and you know, you buy two, and then you're like, wait a second, these two are a slightly different black, and they have like a different font.
Sure.
Personally, it drives me absolutely insane, but we just haven't had the time to like try and find ones that are all.
You had said something about this whole rack here is that it's important for engineers that come to rent this place and clients that you have a good representation of what's out there. Can you explain that a little bit?
What's out there in the sense of gear?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just when people, or at least it's my idea that if people are coming to a studio and they're paying, you know, like some bands are paying, like for them, quite a lot of money, it's important for me that they're seeing stuff, or engineers are seeing stuff that they know are classics or know what they do.
Right.
You know, we've had some like bigger producers come in and be like, okay, great. Can you just rent us a couple of Pultecs and a couple 87s and then maybe like 8 more API pre's? And it's like, yeah, we can. And then like furiously get on the phone. Right. And for some people, that kind of stuff makes a big difference. Yeah. And then for me, it's fun because I get to collect really neat stuff.
You kind of want something like one of each of the brands too, you know?
Yeah, and like the older stuff, especially like people that are from the States or, you know, coming from LA, like this stuff is standard over there. You know, you go into a studio and they don't have this stuff, it's like, oh, this is just like nothing. So we're, you know, to try and get like some engineers who are working on bigger projects, and, you know, we're trying to get them the stuff that they really know they already like.
That's cool. Let's hop down here for a sec, because this is something you posted online recently, and talk about like a beautiful design. This is incredible. So tell me a little bit about this here.
These are McCurdy A300s. They're a tube pre that was made in Toronto in the late 50s and 60s.
Okay.
They were built, they're the amps that were built into, if you imagine like an old radio station that had a console with knobs and then had 2 record players and then 2 like turntable or reel-to-reel players. Right. This was like the main amplifier that was used for the McCurdy line.
Wow.
This is the power supply here.
Wow.
And they're really, here, I'll pop one out here, but they're pretty beastly. So they're
unbelievable.
They're a fully balanced all the way through tube design. A little dusty. And I just, you know, I found them just like really luckily. Some guy posted like 1 or 2 and I was like, how many have you got? And it was this like panic to get them all. And then I got them and I was like, uh-oh, they don't like, these need to be like restored. They're like, one of these has some of look like, so let's say okay, but it's September 62. Like somebody like checked it out in 1962 to make sure it was okay.
Goodness. So, oh my goodness, that's crazy.
So I got James Rowell, the same guy we were talking about earlier.
Sure.
He's a big McCurdy guy, and he did such a nice job. But he went through and cleaned them all, and he was. At first I was like, oh man, James is taking a little while, and then he brought them over, and they were like, it was so clean and perfect, and he'd gone through so carefully. He was like, oh, there's a tiny bit of noise on this one pre, and I was like, oh my god, and now they sound amazing.
Yeah, so, that's great.
Yeah, they have a huge amount of gain, active gain too. So like, and they're probably the quietest pre that we have here, which is really surprising.
Yeah, no kidding.
Great for strings. And
so there's 3 tubes.
3 tubes each, 1 8. So
here's a question for you to see how well you know your gear. This is a quiz. How many tubes in this whole desk right here?
Let's say maybe 44, it would be a guess. It gets hot. We've got some fans in the back, and there's a couple pieces that it's like, if you get cold in the winter, just sit on this rack right here.
Okay, so we've got some Pultecs here.
Yep, some old Pultecs.
What year are those?
I don't even know. I bought them separately. Maybe are they 50s?
They're gorgeous. They're
thank you.
Great condition.
But I got really lucky. I bought one, and then I was like looking, and I was saving and selling stuff to try and get the second, and I found one and bought it and brought it here, and I looked and I was like, wait a second, and they're exactly 100 serial numbers apart. One's 3,223 and one's 3,323.
Wow.
So I was like, oh my God.
And so if you use them together, do you hear a difference, or?
Chris did a comparison himself and sent me the results, and they're really close. You know, I think I'm gonna try like swapping some tubes and seeing what that does, but they sound really good, and I'm not really going to complain about it.
One bulb is brighter than the other. Does that bother you?
I wish you did it for you. It actually does. I'm like...
I'm just joking.
That's
like the character we were talking about, the analog character.
No, it's got to be perfect.
You can't get that. Digital, they would be the same.
I've been looking for it, and I got to decide which one I like better.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to ask you that. I kind of like the dull one.
I like that one too, actually. I'll keep looking.
Okay. We'll come back when you get that fixed.
Okay, we'll just scratch the interview, right?
So again, like I said earlier, honestly, my whole experience with this rack is just with the UAD equivalent. But talk to me about this here.
So that's a 33609.
Okay.
It's the metal knob version, which means it has metal knobs.
Okay.
That's really like it's like the only... They're later versions, and a couple of them are identical to this, but don't have metal knobs.
Okay.
It's not that big a deal. But it's a compressor limiter from the 80s, I think. It's a Neve one. It's very cool. I've always wanted one of these ones, so that's a relatively recent addition. It's got like a limiter section and then a compressor section.
Okay.
Tried it on bass. It was really awesome. But
cool.
It's pretty brand new to me, so, I'm going to have to get a little more reps in before I can tell you exactly what.
But you have used it in tracking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really, I think this is one of the prettiest pieces, in my opinion. It's just like, it's so...
It is great.
It's got great design.
Yeah, it's great. Well, that's the thing. I mean, this stuff that you have is so nice. This is foreign to me. I've never seen this before.
So that's like, it's this weird story, but there's a compressor called the Compex, the ADR Compex, which they've recently reissued. It looks very similar, but black.
Okay.
This company is called Orange County, and during probably like the 70s or 80s when these were popular, Orange County, this company was in charge of distribution for ADR I think they're in Winnipeg or somewhere out west, and they essentially they just completely ripped off the design. They took the compressor that they were distributing and then like made their own exact copy of it. But interestingly, the ADR versions were pretty notorious for breaking down. Okay. And they used better quality components for this one. So there's somebody that's still associated with a company that restores these, and Chris had a different one that was in pretty rough shape, and he got this one. And it's really great. It's the ADR one is really well known for the When the Levee Breaks drum sound. I don't know if you think of that like crazy smashy sort of thing. It's a very fun compressor. And
so you'll use this like as like a stereo crush kind of thing?
Yeah, it's way better than just like a crush mic sort of thing, but it's a really interesting drum action for sure. Yeah.
And are there many of these around, or just
you see them around sometimes? Yeah. Sometimes you can find them for like really cheap. Yeah. But people have caught on a little bit. But the ADR version, they've reissued it, and it's very popular. You see it in a lot of people's racks. Once you notice it, you might notice it more.
Interesting. This here, you can tell by the color a little bit that it's not a reissue.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this.
No triangle. That's what I
always see. Okay.
It's an original LA2A. It's one of the first. I think it's serial number like 300 something, but it's one of the It's just the first model of the LA2A.
Aside from the vintage aspect of it, that cool serial number fact, like why were you so bent on getting this as opposed to the new issues that they're making today?
It just has different transformers. It had an original opto as well, and there's just something like this specific one had a huge reputation of being an incredible one of the LA2A. And just for me personally, when I was making DIY gear and when I was trying reissues, I always thought like, yeah, but I don't know if this sounds as good as the real one.
Right,
you know,
right,
there's always a question of like, is this what it's supposed to be doing? So we've had a few people say like, oh my God, like my compressors are not doing this. My like Warmati versions or whatever.
There's a good argument about going for the absolute top of things is that you never have to question anymore. You know?
Yeah,
and that's the thing when you buy the $500 version of this, or even the $2,000 version of this, or the plug-in, you're always asking yourself that question.
But now you have no excuses.
Well, that's right. It comes down to you.
It's the gear.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like having excuses. So the Squeezebox, I've never seen this before.
Yeah, it's
What's that? More tubes.
It's tube for sure. It's really hard to describe, but it's surprisingly a very, very, very clean compressor.
Okay.
The type of compression it is, like these would be FETs, I guess.
Right.
This is an opto, diode bridge, and VCAs are another one. That API might be VCA. I don't know what this one is, and if you open it up, it's a tube compressor, but it's got this black potted. Do you know what potted is?
No.
It's what they do is they put goop on something that and they seal it in so you can't see what's inside it. And it's got like an IC, like a chip plug on the top. And that's the side chain for it. And I've talked to the designer, and it's a secret. It's what it actually is. It's bizarre. But it's this compressor, which they describe it as like a little person inside, like with his hand on a fader. But it's just, you can crush like vocals with it down to 20 dB, and it doesn't do the same thing that any other compressor here or that I've heard will do. It's very odd, and I would recommend, you can still get them pretty cheap. I can't believe they're still sleepers.
It's not a modern piece? Like
it is modern. It's still being made, yeah.
No way.
People, like you can find a couple people that talk about it online that say like, this compressor is absolutely amazing. But it's not one of the main pieces.
Yeah.
And
what does slope mean? Is that like knee or something? Or what
it's a ratio. Squeeze is threshold, more or less. It's like an input threshold, and then input attack release. It's got like a weird hold circuit. I've tried it on drums too, and
And you say it's clean, like it's not noisy at all, or?
No, it's like you can often I'll just like crush vocals through it, and it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but there's no normal artifacts that you would normally hear, like sucking or pumping or anything. I don't know.
That's crazy.
Why it's like that.
That is really cool.
Maybe I shouldn't be spilling the beans on this, but
well, I'm gonna look that up.
You definitely
because that is. I love seeing things that we've never seen before.
It's a really weird one. I bought it on I was like, well, this is a good deal. I can try it out and see what it's like. And I was like, oh my goodness. This just makes your life. Have you ever worked with a vocalist or maybe yourself and you're like, oh, the volumes are or like I'm compressing too hard, or that thing just like set it and it's done.
That's awesome. Moving over here, I've seen these around. These are pretty sought after. That's like a spring reverb, is that right?
It's an Orban Spring. They sound really, really good. I bought it on like a recommendation, just that it was like a cool spring a while ago. And I think I counted a little while ago, I think 5 people have bought one because they used ours so far.
No way.
Because they just sound so cool, and you can still get deals on them a little bit.
But they just keep going up in price, so I've seen that too.
People are trying to get more and more, but you can still maybe find 1 or 2. They sound awesome. I had this, and at my old studio, I had an EMT 140 plate reverb.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up deciding to keep this instead of the plate.
No kidding.
Because it sounded so cool.
So how do you use it then? Like, explain to me,
like,
would you be mixing with it?
I track, very often personally, I track like guitars and I'll use a send and put it into
Oh,
a
okay.
swing or
Just
something
one
like
channel
that.
of it?
No, I use both.
Oh, wow.
It's cool just gives like a life to it. There's just like
really
an input
cool.
and output and then a little EQ section.
Right.
So,
Okay.
very simple.
Transient designer, I mean, that's not a hugely expensive piece, but it's something that was pretty popular in commercial studios. You don't see them very much
No,
anymore.
And
But it makes sense.
This is Chris's, and I'd never used one before,
Yeah.
and it's very it's way better than the plugin. This is one, like, I'm not usually a guy that's like plugins aren't as good. I've tried the Transient Designer plugin. It does not do what this thing does. It's really, really great.
And it's even the plugin is even made by these guys.
Yeah,
right?
it is, but it's just.
Interesting.
I wish we had more time later to try it, but it's really surprising. The hardware actually does make a difference.
Right.
I don't understand why. I've tried the plugin one a lot, and I can never get something out of it that I want.
That's interesting. Well, I wonder if you'll start to see them again, because, I mean, they are still made, I think. They're still in production. But the sound that indie rock is moving towards, like that 80s gated sound, I wonder if we'll just see a little bit more. Like that super tight snare is kind of popular, you know, so I wonder if...
They're really good on like toms. What's really a fun trick is put them on room mics and like crank up the sustain, and it just blows them up.
Oh, cool.
I wouldn't even necessarily say they're 80s. They're just pretty useful.
This piece here, you said it's local.
Yeah, an airfield audio eliminator. I think it's probably more popular in Toronto than most places because the guy, Dave Miller, lives like up the street from here, more or less. One time we thought it had broken down, and I just like went to his house and he like checked it out for me. Turned out I patched it wrong. But yeah, it's a really great opto compressor. Sounds really good. Yeah, we had it in our B room for a little while, and we just decided, you know what, we should just throw it in the A room.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite piece?
Favorite for what?
Oh, for making as your iPhone background.
Oh.
What is your... Like,
no, that's a good question.
What's something that's really near and dear to your heart? Or that was a good
For
score?
usefulness, honestly, surprisingly, the Squeezebox is the most... It's the one of the only modern pieces that I've kept.
If they're in production, what do they go for new? Do you know?
You can still get them for maybe like $1,800,
Wow.
$2,000 for a mono. They've got a stereo version as well, and a mastering version.
Where are they based out of?
LA, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, they have other pieces, but it's just like not a lot of them are made. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the Pultecs are really nice too.
Yeah.
They sound really good.
It's all great, man.
Thanks
it's all
so much.
great. It's so funny, like you know, you spend I spend months and months like just dreaming about half of one of these pieces. You know what I mean?
Well, do you know what?
It's
But you don't get it all at the same time.
Yeah.
We were talking about this. You just like build yourself up, buy some stuff, and then something will come up that you really want, and you sell everything and buy that one thing.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because I've heard some people, I want to ask your opinion on this. I've heard some people say that when you get a great piece, that never to sell it. And that to always keep it, and that's how you build it. It's the indecisive that you'll never get anything built. But do you agree to that, or do you think it's good to move stuff around?
It kind of depends. I've definitely had things that I said I would never sell, and then sold them in a flash when something even better came up, you know?
Right.
Realistically, as long as you buy used and you are smart about what you buy, you can really just... You can get paid for owning gear pretty much if you get good at it.
That's really cool.
You buy something and then you sell it for... You don't have to be like a jerk and like flipping stuff and like getting a crazy price, but you know, if you buy something in Canada and then the dollar's really good in the States, sell it in the States and make a bit of money, and then, you know, like... Yeah.
Yeah,
and
no,
then
that's a good
just
point.
like slowly build. I went on a real tear maybe last year, and I was literally like going through my apartment being like, okay, what else can I really have to try and get enough money to get like something that I wanted. I ended up selling my only guitar. It was like I had like an American Telecaster, and I was like, I play this and I like it, but I was getting another guitar.
Yeah.
Hurt a little bit, but
that's funny.
you know.
I'm actually the opposite. I was telling you about the Moog that I bought, and I love preamps, but I've been realizing that creatively, a preamp can't write a song.
No.
A preamp can't do anything creative, and even though it actually is important to have that, you know, when I sit down with that sub 37, there are sounds like a song can come out of that.
For
you know,
sure.
Same with
for
a
sure.
guitar.
And the song is the most important part.
It
like,
is.
None of this does anything
Yeah.
if you don't have a good song.
That's right. That's
which
right.
is really frustrating.
Well, I have none of this, and I have no good sound. So let's shut the cameras
Oh, my
off. Thank
goodness.
you. Anyway, this is great. We're gonna tour around and talk. Just tell me real quickly, because I know the guys are gonna get some shots of out here. But we have your live room out here, and is all the tracking happen out there?
Yes. Yeah.
And so you do drums out there. I saw a great piano as well.
Yeah, we recently got that on loan from our friend James Paul. It's what is it, C7. It's like we didn't have a grand before.
Right.
And he came in and used the studio and said, studio's great, but you don't have a grand piano. Here's one. And I was like, thank you, James.
You do a lot of Canadian indie rock bands. It's just kind of like modern music, folk bands, and
Yeah, all
rock
kinds of
bands.
different music.
Did
really.
you have a genre that you prefer to work on?
Myself?
Yeah.
Not really.
No?
I like working on stuff that is has good musicians and people that are looking for interesting sounds. Personally,
Yeah.
I would never say that I'm really good at getting like ultra clean radio.
Right.
It's not my forte and not really my taste.
Totally.
It's really fun. You know when you make like a recording on a 4-track cassette,
Yeah.
and it's just like, oh, this sounds so good. It's not like
Yeah.
perfect, but it
Yeah.
sounds so good.
Yeah.
I kind of like leaning towards there. It's
Well,
like,
that's cool.
yeah.
That's good character. How do you? A question I have is that there's in the advantage of the DIY studios and the home studios is that you have unlimited amount of time to be creative. How does a band? I've always wondered this because I've never recorded in a commercial studio like this. How does a band be creative when looking for guitar tones or messing around with the synth when the clock's going, another client's coming?
That's a good question. It's really part of it's about preparation. Like you can't be coming into the studio not only not having sounds but also not having like your part right.
Right,
Well, it
yeah.
depends on how much money you have.
Yeah.
But for like the people that like most of the people that we're working
Yeah.
with, you know, you have time to be creative and just as long as you're organized, you know, as long as you're not trying to figure out what you're playing, it's more trying to figure out your sound.
Right.
Very often there's enough time to have a lot of fun with those kind of things.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's cool. And do bands record live out there?
yeah, we
sometimes?
do live at the floor all the time. Yeah. Most often we use a live room for drums very often, and then we do like guitars and bass in the booths.
Right.
Or,
Okay.
You know.
Okay. Cool.
That kind of idea.
Yeah. Well, listen, man. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah,
This is a
thanks
really,
for coming.
really great place. I love the feel of it. I love like that it's brand new. It smells brand new when I came in here.
That really is such a good thing to hear.
Yeah,
Because,
no,
you know,
it's-
we've had some smelly musicians in here. I'll tell you that.
No, it's a really cool place. I think it's got that great hybrid of having character, but at the same time, you realize you come in here and you're going to make a great record.
Thank you so much. That's
by
so
the way
good to
it
hear.
looks. No, it's cool. Thanks a lot, man.
Cool, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Thanks, guys.